Hi guys, this is Sam with Spieler Custom Baits. Today we're going to go over how I make my finesse jigs. Starting off here with a 1/4 ounce jig head on a number 2 Gamakatsu hook. Powder coated these black. We're going to start just by tying in a piece of thread, and we're going to cut off this tag end. With my finesse jigs, I like to use both silicone skirt and living rubber. The living rubber just imparts a whole bunch of action, especially when you're using less materials. Just going to grab one silicone tab here, loosely tie it in, and then situate that where I want it to sit on that jig. Making sure they're not overlapping too bad. Then I'm going to tie that right in. And we're going to start. I pre-cut my living rubber into tabs. And then I like my tabs to be kind of small, so I go ahead and split them apart so that I can layer them around my jig. And then we're gonna really be pulling tight around the jig collar when we're tying these in. It'll really help create that flare and allow that living rubber to impart a whole bunch more action in the water. I usually do this because with these small finesse jigs, I almost all exclusively pair these with some sort of plastic, whether it be a net or a small swim bait. I'm gonna whip finish this in, tie it down, whip finish it a second time, just for a little bit of security. And we're going to cut that thread, and we're going to add a little bit of adhesive around that thread just to make sure that it doesn't come unraveled. With the adhesive, you have to kind of be careful. I always wipe off the excess with my fingers, but if there is excess on there, it can wick up all of your strands and hold them together or create a stiff presentation. Just wipe off that little bit of excess with my fingers. I'm using a non-toxic adhesive, so I feel comfortable doing that. And then I always finish my bass jigs off with wire. Just get three good turns in there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to turn and twist this multiple times until it's at the tension that I feel comfortable with. Once we have that tension, we're going to take some wire cutters and we're going to snip just a couple twists above the initial tie-in, and we're going to push that little piece of tag end back into the collar. Then I'm going to go ahead and separate my living rubber strands. Anything sharp will do. Some people can do it just by cutting it and pulling back. I prefer to do it strand by strand, and what I do is I pinch it between my fingers, and when I'm pulling up, I'm still keeping that end pinched so that it kind of, the tension of the actual rubber is what pulls it apart, and that way it doesn't really stick as bad to the collar of the tie-in. And I always tie my jigs a lot longer than what I actually need, and then trim them down to size. I'm doing this one in black just because it's classic. You can pair it with multiple different colors, um, and it doesn't really limit your applications. Sometimes you can even get in there and pull it apart with your fingers. And you can see that living rubber already imparting quite a bit of action onto the material of that jig. We're going to cut this almost all the way down to the head of the jig. If you see, that creates your brush-like collar on the top of the jig for those finesse applications. And then on the back of the body, I'm going to take it to about 1 inch behind that hook. And you can really see now how that living rubber imparts all that action. And we can really see how it flares out from that collar. And you can see now we have our finished finesse jig. This is Sam with Spieler Custom Baits. Thank you guys for watching today.